So now let's talk about layers in SolidWorks. So we've got this drawing with some orthographic view, an isometric view, and some dimensions, and here some construction geometries as well. As you can see, we have the center line here, then some lines here, and this circle, which is a construction geometry. Now, if you want to separate them, then you can put these objects on respective layers. For example, you can create a layer for dimension, put all the dimensions on the dimension layer. You can create a layer for construction geometry and so on. By doing so, you can essentially control the properties of all of these objects using layer directly. So you can assign a layer color and that color will be assigned to all the objects of that layer. You can also control the visibility using that layer. So let's explore this option. Now the layer option is not directly available. For that, you need to right click here on the command manager, go to toolbar and activate the layer toolbar. Now that toolbar is active, we can make and manage layers using this. So by default, this toolbar will show up here on the bottom left, but I'll just move it here to make it a floating kind of toolbar. Now it may look like I have some sort of issue with the graphics, but it is just essentially one single toolbar. So I'll just click here and now as you can see, everything else just disappeared. Now here we have one single layer and that layer is format. So this is the only default layer that will show up and you can create as many layers as you want. Let's go to this new option and create a new layer called dim. Now I'll click outside and we have dim layer added for dimensions. I'll click on new and I'll call it construction and click outside. So we have a construction layer. Now this arrow will show up right next to the current layer. So current layer is the layer which is currently active and you can change it simply by clicking on any other layer. These are the visibility options. So if you want to hide any layer, just click here, the layer will hide. This is the plot option. If you hide the plot of any layer, it won't print any object of that layer. For example, if you put all the dimensions on dim layer, but you don't want to plot the dimensions, then you can click here to hide the plot. So dimensions will show up in the drawing, but when you plot it, it won't show up. So I'll just uncheck it. And then this option is the color. Now let's change the color of dimension and I'll just click here and I'll make it red. Then I'll click here for construction geometry and I'll maybe make it green and click OK. Now we also have some other options like style and thickness. So if you want to add line type style, then you can click here and add a line type style to a layer. Now all the objects of that layer will take that particular line type. Also, you can change the thickness from this list. We're not going to do that and instead we'll only stick with these properties. And with that, I'll click OK. And now in this list, we have dim layer, construction layer, and the default format layer. We also have two options here, per standard and none. When you select per standard, then SolidWorks will simply apply the properties as per the document properties. When you select none, it will just apply the property as per the system options, the global settings, and format will just apply the properties that you have modified in your current sheet, which is more or less like per standard if you haven't made any kind of modification. All right, so with that, I'll now close this layer toolbar. And let's go back to this drawing. So here we have several dimensions. Now let's move all of these dimensions on the dim layer. And to do that, I'll just select this first dimension and then control select some other dimensions in this list. Now in a similar way, you can select as many dimensions as you like, but in this case, let's only select these many dimensions. And now to move it on a layer, simply right click and go to change layer. Now from this list, select dim. And now these objects are on dim layer. So if I click outside, you'll notice that the color will also change because dim layer is red. Now, another quick method of transferring layer is this format painter option. Now, using this option, you can transfer the properties, not only layer, but other properties as well from one object to another. Now, as we know, in this case, these dimensions are on dim layer. So if you want to transfer other dimensions on this layer, then simply select the one as reference. So I'll just select any dimension which is already on dim layer and now click on other dimensions. That's it. So by simply clicking here, we are essentially moving all of these dimensions on the dim layer and we are done. So quickly, we have transferred all of these dimensions on the respective layer. Press escape and here we are. Now in a similar way, if you want to transfer these objects, the construction geometries, then control select all of these objects, then right click and go to change layer. Now here we have, I'll do it again, right click and here we have the change layer. Select here. From this list, I'll select construction. All right, now these objects are on construction layer. So click outside and it's green in color. When making any new object, SolidWorks provides you an option of selecting its layer by default. For example, let's say we want to add a center line right here. For that, I'll go to center line and now I'll select this line right here and I'll select this line right about here. All right, that's added. Now in this case, we may not see an option of adding a layer, but that's totally fine. Just move it up. We'll put it on a different layer and now let's add a dimension. So I'll go to dimension, I'll select the center line and I'll then select this endpoint right about here. And now I'll just put this dimension here. In this case, you will get an option of selecting the layer right here. And that option is here in the other tab. Now with this dimension selected, go to other tab and look at this here. The layer is selected as format, change it to dim. Click OK and it's by default now on dim layer. So in this way you can do it. Now, as you know, for this object, we got no option whatsoever of selecting the layer. So for this case, you can right click and select change layer and the usual method. You can select the construction and click outside, or you can use the format painter option to just transfer the property from an existing object. Now, if you want to control the visibility settings of layer, right click and go to toolbar, activate layer. Now go to layer option. And here you can now control it using this option. So if I hide dim, dimensions will disappear, construction will disappear. If you want to delete a layer, just select it and click on delete. Click yes and the layer is deleted. Now this will simply delete the layer but not objects that are already available on that layer. So you may need to now create a new layer and then transfer these objects on that new layer. Click OK and that's everything about layers.